Our last segment is going to be a roundtable discussion on section management. And we have Carin Porras from the Family Law section and Kevin Johnson from the General Practice Solo and Small Firm section.
Thank you.
Who are going to help guide us through this. A couple sort of closing notes before we move into this final presentation. You've all been handed an evaluation form. If you wouldn't mind, over this next so many minutes, just fill it out. And when we're done, Dixie's going to come up and help close, and she will be happy to take these from you. As much feedback as you can give, it is greatly appreciated. Also, I want to say a very sincere thanks to everyone who's been here today. It has been, in my view, a very successful day. We're happy that you were here, and we hope that you will go back to your sections with what you've learned here and take back some energy and some enthusiasm to maybe do some different things and have some additional resources you can tap into as a result of today. And remember also, this program is every other year. At least that's been the pattern of it. And so be thinking about the next time this is offered and how you want to do it and who you'd want to bring, who you'd want to send. There's a lot to be gained. And also remember that this has been video. This is the first time we've done a video recording. That video will be made available to leadership. You'll receive an email that will discuss how to access it. It should be password protected, but we'll get the password to the leadership so you can see it. So it'll be somewhat safeguarded from general perusal, but hopefully easily, readily available to leadership. So let me turn it over to our panel for a final discussion. Thank you very much.
All right, Carin, do you want to start it off?
I'll go first. And we have kind of decided to make it kind of a free flow discussion. So Kevin is free to jump in and add to whatever I say and vice versa as the mood hits, I guess we say. And I'm glad to hear that it's videotaped because the family law section has unfortunately had our leadership retreat, which we do every other year, conflict the last several occasions that this program has been put on. And if it is videotaped, then that gives our leadership folks a chance to look at it because it has so much valuable information that really we start off our executive committee with the secretary, and it would be really invaluable for the secretary to be here. Our chair-elect is here today, but starting off to have those 4 years ahead of you would be even infinitely more valuable because there is so much that we can pick up and take away and utilize looking forward for your years on the executive committee and especially as chair and to implement your visions and your ideas and to learn from others. So I was chair in 2012 to 13, so I've had a year to kind of relax and sit back, and now since I'm no longer the immediate past president or past chair, I'm kind of out of it. But I won't be. I will continue to be active because it has given me so much over the years that I've spent in leadership and on the Executive Council in the Family Law section. The Family Law section is the 4th largest section, and I think we should be bigger. I think that the topics that go into family law are interrelated with so many other sections. And when we talk about membership, acquiring, recruitment, and retention, we can do so much across the board. Just even, listening today and drawing on experiences in the past, for example, what I would like to, have Maria do as the chair-elect and to talk about in the family law section is, we need a YLD point person because so many new young lawyers do practice, whether it's exclusively or as a part of their practice, family law. And it would be an opportunity for them to network with seasoned attorneys and to be able to learn from us. We do have a mentoring program, so we do have our website includes mentors that will talk to folks and guide them through their issues with family law, ethical issues, that relate to family law. And I think it would be valuable both for us in terms of improving the professionalism and the knowledge of the young attorneys, and for them in terms of moving forward with their practices. When I had learned several years ago, and Kevin and I were discussing, that 60% of new lawyers go into a solo or small firm practice. That's an incredible amount of people. And many of them now don't get the kind of mentoring because they're in a small or a solo firm practice. And I think it's incumbent upon us and the leaders of the bar to provide that ability for new lawyers to be mentored by other folks. So really, most family law lawyers are not in big practices. The topic of family law, to have, your business clients utilize a family law, a divorce lawyer in the firm doesn't always do well, because of the kind of issues that come up in family law cases. People aren't always happy, and so you don't want to lose your business clients because, they weren't really happy with whatever happened in their divorce, because a lot of people don't come out and they're happy. So there aren't a lot of us who practice in large firms. So most of our members should be, or it would be great for them to be members of the GPSSF. And vice versa for those who practice family law. There are international law. We've had a lot of work with legislatively over the past years. So there are a lot of crossover places where we can draw on memberships. Other people have also talked about law schools. We have representatives from our section that interact with the law schools. There's a minority mentoring picnic in Miami every year that's a wonderful opportunity. I would encourage all the sections that have, folks in Miami to attend that in November because it's the law students that are, looking to network with people. It's other sections. It's a great opportunity for membership, and we've been successful in getting members there. So I think that there's a lot to offer that we have back and forth. I'll let you.
Oh, no, that's fine. You're doing great.
Keep going. But scholarships is also, we are fortunately doing well financially as one of the sections of the bar due to some of our CLEs. Especially, we have one. Family law lawyers are I think it's because of the nature of what we deal with and the kind of emotionally charged issues that we face. You really need to sit back and get perspective, and we're more maybe than other types of lawyers really sociable and friendly. So we have our biggest CLE, which is put on annually, is attended by about 1,400 people, but it's live. And we have been encouraged to make it videoed or audio taped, and we don't want to do that because we want to meet, we want to encourage people to go, to learn, to interact with other lawyers. It's, it's where we meet other people so we can refer people to in other parts of the world, and it's very successful. So as a result of our success, we've been able to give a number of scholarships, and scholarships for lawyers who are practicing family law or are interested in becoming active in the section, who do not have the means to afford attendance or participation in, say, for example, our leadership retreat or our other retreats.
Carin, what do the scholarships cover?
Generally, it's usually a flat number. So, for example, we just increased this past year. We decided to increase. We now, Maria will tell me if I'm wrong, but I think we have $4,000 up to $1,000 scholarships for our annual conference, and then we also do smaller for our leadership retreat, which is every other year, and which will be in September this year. And the odd year, we do a trial advocacy workshop. So it gives other people the ability to attend those, and we've been very successful. We've got a lot of applications, and it's in all our best interests, because you want to practice against lawyers who know what they're doing and have some knowledge of the law. And the more that we can help new lawyers or lawyers who don't know as much to learn more, we're all better off. We've also, just this year, and then I'll let him go, I'm hogging the conversation, established a new award named for retired Judge Ray McNeil, who has been a great member, active member of our Executive Council and the section for a number of years, but is also the epitome of professionalism. And we've established an award in his name to be given every year that we have someone who is worthy of receiving that award.
All right. Carin's section has had a lot of successes, but our topic is what works and what doesn't. So I'd like to balance that out. I'd like to talk to you. I'd like to talk to you about my greatest disaster as chair. And Ricky, if you're sitting back there, you should be getting kind of nervous right now. We had a really good year overall. I don't want to put this on the wrong foot here, but the one thing that went wrong for us went wrong early in the year, and it was a great learning opportunity for me, and it might be a learning opportunity for others of you. Because, of course, when we sat down and did our strategic planning, we thought about ways to reach out and get more members. And we had a number of people on our executive council who said, we're on a bunch of listservs. We participate in these. They are great. They do wonderful things. They will increase your membership. You should have a listserv. And so, of course, we created a listserv. And our listserv was spectacularly unsuccessful for about 6 months without doing any harm whatsoever. It just never got used, okay? And then finally, for whatever reason, there came a day when I think Ricky and some of our other members were having a conversation, and for whatever reason, some setting had gotten flipped. And at the end of the day, this is on a Thursday afternoon at 2:56 p.m., I got an email on the listserv from Ricky Libert that said, with the heading, Auto, Ricky Libert is out of the office, returning 11/1/2013. That came in at 2:56. At 2:58, I got a response from someone else who said, Mr. Libert, please see above error message I received from you. I'm not sure what this is regarding, but if you still need to contact me, please see my contact information below. Someone else said, Misty, I got the same email. I don't know what it was. And then the third one was, not sure this came from us. The fourth one was just broke the dam. All caps, get me off this email string. We then got about 130 more of those in short order, okay, which are all just blowing up my computer, and I can't get Ricky because, of course, Ricky Libert is out of the office. So, what we ended up having to do is get in a hold of somebody at the bar and actually figure out what we needed to do was to contact the provider and shut this down. So I had to, on very short order, locate our provider, figure out how to shut down the thing, and then I had to spend the next basically 8 hours crafting an email apology to try to send this out and maybe save some face with our section. And so that night we sent out an email apology, and I believe I titled that something like, apology for the listserv issue and answer to the age-old question of who is Ricky Libert. So Ricky, would you stand up so we can recognize you back there? So that's the backstory to how Ricky Libert became a celebrity in the bar. So the thing about it is, when you are in section leadership, you're going to have those issues. Things are going to go south in ways that you don't anticipate and can't understand, and you're looking back, you won't know why it happened, but you're going to have to rise to the occasion, and that's what you learn along the way. But I think besides those obvious disasters that are going to happen, there's other things you can do that will go more towards the topic of what works. And I think if you can divide those up, you can divide them into several different areas. And I think one of them that we are supposed to discuss is membership and retention. And I think all of us look around and say, well, we have strategic planning meetings, we do retreats, and we sit down and say, how are we going to serve our members? And I'm guessing if you had a strategic planning meeting, you probably came up with the same things that are the quote-unquote added value that all of us come up with. You're going to do CLE. You're going to do board certification if you're in a substantive area. You're going to have networking opportunities, writing opportunities, and if you went far enough, you probably thought maybe we can have some input on rules, maybe we can have some input on legislative positions. And the bigger sections will do all of that. For the smaller sections, maybe you'll do some but not others. I think you need to think about what your section members are really looking for. And so we did a section survey a couple years ago, and we are still working with the information we got from that survey because it was very valuable to us. Carin, have you ever done a survey in your section?
We have tried to do that. It has not been particularly successful for us, but there are some things that we have found valuable. One of them, and I was not here early this morning, but it looks like you did have a lecture by the Council of Section Chairs, and I have attended that a couple years, and I would encourage everyone who's in leadership to do that because I found it a fabulous way to get ideas from other section leaders about what their sections do with regards to everything that we're talking about, Kevin, about CLEs, about how to encourage membership, about how to retain those members, about how to make people interested in the section. And that was one of them. That I have found particularly valuable and would encourage people to do. The other thing I think in terms of how to encourage people to stay and to have them participate was something that Arnell was just talking about, and it's the inclusion issue. Because sometimes what happens in our networking events or our retreats is that you see a number of people that you know from your involvement in the section, and there are a few, maybe 5 or 10 other people who are interested either you have a great location at a fabulous hotel or a great CLE planned, and they decide to go for their own reasons. That's our opportunity to be inclusive and not to just stay in our own groups with the people that we know and that we are involved with in the section work, but also to make an effort to encourage new people to be inclusive and to encourage those people to participate and explain why section participation is such a worthwhile opportunity. So I think inclusion is a huge way to encourage new members to become involved and more people to feel comfortable. Communication, as you were talking about your listserv, and I actually joined the GPSSF after I found out about that 60% thing, because I thought, well, that it makes sense, totally makes sense, especially for family law lawyers, because so many family law lawyers have general small practices and do some family law. So I actually got that listserv thing with the Ricky Libert thing, and there were a whole pile of email. Yeah. But communication is key, and the way we communicate. And what I did my year during the section was to not just to give information to our executive council, because as all of you have, our executive councils are not just from one geographical area. They're from all over the state. And I guess there's some out-of-state people. But they don't know what the leadership of the section is doing on a daily basis and what's going on. And it's kind of training for your executive council as well as informative and communication for the whole section to kind of see what's going on. So email blasts are a great way.
How often do you send them out?
Usually, with the whole email blast of the section was perhaps quarterly or as needed. In my year, 2012 to 13, we had a huge legislative issue with regards to reform for alimony. Mm-hmm. Which sailed through the legislature, and we were luckily able to well, luckily from the perspective of the section, because not everybody shares our views, but it was vetoed by Governor Scott. It'll be back next year, and I've already talked to Francine about our expectation that that'll be back. But I had to call on the members of the section via email blast to make phone calls if they agreed with the position of the section with regard to what was going on in Tallahassee and in terms of what we needed them to do on behalf of Florida's families.
I think that's really important, the email, because that's such a critical piece to keeping everyone informed as to what's going on.
Exactly. And I think also with our executive council people, they tend to become disenfranchised throughout the year because we do have the 3 live meetings. And not necessarily do we let everybody know. The executive committee generally knows what's going on, but not the whole executive council. We have 32 members in our executive council all over the state. So I think it was very helpful to give them an idea. I did it pretty much every 2 weeks and sent out an email to our executive council letting them know what was going on in terms of standing positions or legislative issues, or also I tried to make it personal.
Too, if I can explain what we did similar to that. When I took over as chair, I felt that one of the things that was happening is that you have an executive council meeting, and we all know what's going on in the executive council, but what are we doing to communicate to the members? How do the members of our section really find out what is happening? It's a big gap there, and if everyone thinks, why am I in the section? You have to have some way of reaching them. They're not going to come to your meetings. Okay, you might see a few of them at a reception if you hold a reception, but you have to reach them. And if you do just a huge email blast very infrequently, or if you do maybe a quarterly newsletter, you're not going to get as much contact out of that as you need. We wanted to touch them more frequently. We instituted something called Quick Link, which is an email that goes out every 2 weeks, and it's limited to 5 topics. It's meant to be read in 5 minutes or less. And each one of those, when you see it, it comes in a nice graphic format, and you can click on that individual link, which will have maybe a 1-paragraph lead, and will take you then to an actual posting that is either on our website or on our Facebook page or wherever it is, and you can pop up and read the whole story and get the full deal. But we usually put in at least one practice management tip. We use it to cross-market our solo and small firm conference, and the way we do that is we've pulled in our small firm conference, we have a tech session in which we get experts, and we put a panel of 3 of them up there, and they come up with 50 tech tips in 50 minutes. And so what we tried to do was take one of those tips from the last year and plug it into each of those quick link emails that goes out each week. So you get that piece of advice, and you also say, this was from the 2013 conference. Check the schedule to see what's going on in 2014 or 2015 now, as the case may be. So you can use it to cross-market. If the chair has something that's really important, that is something that needs to be brought to the attention of the membership, you can have a chair's message at the start of it. You can use it to convey that you have upcoming CLE events, and you can post the link or the registration for your upcoming event. It's just a good way to get people used to looking for information from your section. And what that does is that helps answer that value question of what am I getting out of being a member of this section? What do you do for me other than put on CLEs? You know, where do my dues go? And I think that's one of the questions you really have to answer, is what are you providing to them?
And what we do in terms of that is a monthly newsletter that we call FAMSEG. And that's an electronic newsletter that is also, as Kevin said, because people have a short attention span of doing very short articles or information about upcoming events that would be in the area of family law. So I think we kind of take that off. I think your 5 minutes things, ours probably takes longer to read, but I think that's about the amount of time people want to spend on an email that comes to them every 2 weeks or every month from the section.
Carin, how about if we talk about how you recruit and how you deal with the executive council leadership? Because I think that's important. I think that's something that we've struggled with recently. We found found we were getting a little bit stale. And we had a bunch of people in our section, or our executive council, who were long-term members. And you look around the room at any given point, and probably half those people had been chair of the section at one point. And of course, once you're chair of the section, that sort of diminishes your interest in going back and becoming just a committee chair or just leading a project, because you sort of feel like you've been there and done that at some point. That's just the way it is, unfortunately. You have some people who are the exception to that rule, but most of those people are there, and they're helpful because they provide you institutional knowledge. But at some point, you don't want to clog the path to leadership for the ones who are coming up. So I think one of the things we did was we instituted an emeritus program, where after someone's been chair of the section, they can move to emeritus status. They're welcome to attend any of the meetings. They just don't have a vote anymore at that point, and they can elect that status at any point. It's totally up to them. But we got to the point where we were a little stale, and we had 3 of them who just volunteered to move to that status. That opened up the ability for us to get new members in. So then we had to think about, what do we want to accomplish when we add new members to the board? Where do you get those new members from? And one of the things we noticed is we were also a little centered in North Florida and Central Florida, and so we made a push to get more members out of South Florida. Well, where do you get them from? Okay, we looked at YLD and we looked at Leadership Academy as both being great sources, because that way when you get those people, you know that they have a background, you know that they're vetted. You can think about, you call your people down there that you know, that you trust, and say, tell me someone who should be on this executive council who's going to work hard and who has some background in leadership and can do a good job. Because those are the type of people you want to get on there. When you get it wrong, and when you get someone who doesn't have that sort of background and isn't willing to work and maybe is divisive, then that's an issue you have to address. And I think we had one of those in our past a couple of years ago also, where somebody came on who sort of lost the respect in some ways of other executive council members and was seen as not being productive. And so there actually came a time where we had to sort of intervene, talk to him about whether it made sense for him to put his name in again to get another term. And some of those conversations are the hard conversations that you have to have, but that's part of section leadership, is figuring out how you're going to get the right people on your board.
And ours is and it's interesting how all the sections, and I assume that, I figured those are in your bylaws, we're all a little different, because we have 32 executive council members, none of whom are past chairs. Those folks aren't really, should I say, not that they're not welcomed at meetings, but they're really not on the radar as continuing on again to executive council. They are trustees, we call them trustees, and at any meeting at which they appear, the 3 most recent past chairs or trustees are allowed to vote. If there are 5 or 6 of those older folks, or folks who are chairs in earlier times, don't get a vote. As you said, they're great for institutional knowledge and to provide information about the history of how things evolved. But yes, you do run the problem of the issue of staleness. We haven't had a lot of issue in terms of getting people to apply for the executive council. We usually have many more applicants than we do spaces, but what we do run into on occasion, which is challenging in a different way, is to ensure that the sitting executive council members are all actively involved and actively participating. And we do have requirements in our bylaws with regards to the participation of executive council members, although you hope you don't have to be pointing to people and say, and make those difficult calls, because that is hard to tell somebody who's been active in the past but is not really doing what they should be, and kind of taking up the space of someone who would be more effective
but
in the
if you
section.
don't do it, it will hurt your executive council.
Absolutely.
And that's the problem, is I think it really, those of you that are coming in, most of you have a lot of leadership experience in other places. You sort of know how to run an organization. But I think one of the ultimate things that really makes a section successful is the importance of the chair's leadership. And you have to sit down and think about, how am I going to run this meeting? What are the issues that are going to come up? Does my program administrator aware of them in advance? Are there things my program administrator is going to need my help communicating so they don't blow up and eat up all of our meeting time? Because everyone knows there are certain agenda items, when you put it on your agenda, you can sort of foresee this is the one that's going to explode. So where do you put that? Do you put it at the start of your agenda, or do you put it later on in your agenda where you have some time to get the other business that you need to take care of out of the way first? Do you have the documents you're going to need when people ask questions about that explosive issue? Are you prepared? Do you have the background? Do you have some answers for them? And maybe there's people that you know where that's a hot button issue for them, and maybe you need to go to them before the meeting and say, hey, this issue is going to come up. I wanted to alert you to this, and I wanted to see what your thoughts are on it, and really have a way to make your meetings more efficient, because that use of time as a chair is one of the most critical things in being a good section leader.
And those are all valuable points that you bring up, Kevin, especially the order and the organization of your executive council meeting and the knowledge about, as you say, things that are going to be an issue. I used to always bring a copy of the bylaws to have with me, and the points of Robert's rules, because there will inevitably come up issues that you need to address in a certain way, and you need to be prepared to do so. You also may want to have on hand the past minutes from your executive council meeting. So if there comes up an issue as to what happened in a prior meeting, you have that information at your fingertip. We are extremely fortunate to have an incredibly efficient and wonderful program administrator in Diana Polston, who's sitting in the back of the room. And she's been invaluable in all those type of administrative details. And another thing, I can't say enough about the people that I have leaned on and gone to for guidance and assistance from the bar. I don't think that early on, when I started participating and even being on executive council, that I knew the extent of who's there and who you can call to ask questions. Terry Hill, who's also sitting in the back, fielded so many of my phone calls over the past years with questions I had about how to approach something, or a question about, CLEs, or an issue regarding something on the budget. I can't tell you how many times I called up and asked Terry for his advice and information. Paul Hill is also a valuable source of information, always. And again, 2 years when I was section chair, Francine Walker, what her advice was so helpful. Dixie Teal has now, come in and stepped in and is doing an awesome job. So there are so many people that you can go to when you have questions about the way things work. And I don't think everybody in executive council also, really knows a lot about how the bar works and how our sections fit in within the bar, which is why something like this program is so important, and which those kind of topics are what we try to do in our leadership retreat, because the success of your section is going to be determined by leadership. And if your meetings are disorganized or unruly, it kind of falls on the person who's leading it, and it makes it very difficult to get the work that you want your section to get done in your year to happen.
One of the things that we've gone through is we've been trying over the last 4 years or 5 years to really develop what we felt was a signature event. Some of y'all already have that. You have a conference, we have 1,400 people, which I'm really, really impressed by, because we have a hard time getting folks there live. And that goes back to what you heard from the CLE folks about how many people prefer to get it by audio or by video versus being there live. And we felt that networking is such an important part of live CLE that we needed to get practitioners together. And that's why we have a solo and small firm conference every year. And I'd like to share a couple of the travails we had trying to put that together. The first thing is we started trying to do it by ourselves, separate and apart from any other bar meeting. And we got in a situation where we had too many hotel rooms booked and just killed ourselves on overhead and expenses. And then Terry made a great suggestion, which was to go ahead and book it alongside the winter meetings. You don't have to worry about the room guarantee anymore. And that got us some cost stability. Well, once you get the cost side squared away, I think like any CLE, you have to look at your budget. You have to figure out where are those revenues coming from. And I don't think you can do CLE these days effectively without sponsors. I want to talk to you briefly about how important sponsorships are and how they really make it go. Because we've been able to partner with a couple of great sponsors. We have one that's not just a CLE sponsor, it sponsors our whole year in terms of what we do, and that's Florida Lawyers Mutual. They have a common mission with us in that they want to eliminate malpractice among small practitioners, solo and small firm practitioners. And so they've been great. We've been able to put on joint receptions with them. They sponsor our solo and small firm conference, and we get help from them in terms of selecting speakers. They have a lot of material and content that they can share with us. So look for sponsors like that. Think about partnering with other sections. But going back to this conference, what we struggled with is as soon as we got the cost side straightened out, and now we had to build revenues, and we had to find those sponsors, we looked at what are the ways we can do that? And the struggle always falls on that person who you put in charge of getting the sponsors, because the tendency is for that person sort of to have the whole job, and they have to go out and recruit them all. It won't get done that way. So one of the things we did this year is over this last year, we hired a consultant to help us with marketing and to help us with PR. And she's done a great job. She produces those quick link emails that I talked about. She updates the content on our website, because that's really the burden for the executive council members. We're writing all day long for our jobs. It's hard to go in and write content at night for your section website or for your communications. If you have a professional who knows how to write it, knows how to phrase it, and you can just give her the general gist of it, it really makes it much easier, because then you're just editing. And what she helped us do was to also train our individual executive council members on how to ask for sponsorships. She came up with great form letters. She talked about the psychology and how you actually go talk to someone and ask them for a sponsorship, and how you do that successfully. And that way we can make it a target that each of our executive council members are going to go out and are going to bring in 3 sponsors or 5 sponsors or whatever we decide is the right number. And that is really something that makes a huge, huge difference. But if you're going to hire somebody like that, you're going to have a consultant, you need to think about what are the terms that you're engaging that person on. Sit down, think about the contract. Is it flat fee? Is it hourly? What are they supposed to do? What's their mission? And again, vet them very carefully before you get into that. But those are the types of things I would suggest can really make a difference, because they take the burden off your executive council members. Plus, those people have a lot of expertise in how this is done. So you're not having the problem of reinventing the wheel, where you can just turn over to them the things that any good marketing consultant knows how to do. It's been helpful for us.
And I'll share with you something I just learned today from our program administrator. She told me that pretty much in one day, she was able to get 3 sponsors for our upcoming leadership retreat. And what she shared with me was that she feels it's much more effective that people want to know what they're sponsoring, not just they're a general sponsor, but they're actually sponsoring a breakfast or a meeting or a reception or box lunches. And she's been very effective and very successful in that way, because asking people to contribute money is not something a lot of people are comfortable doing. I'm one of them who would prefer someone else do it. But it is a part of what we do, because the programs that we put on are expensive. The way that our yearly, annual, very successful program works is and the way, one of the reasons I think for its success is because it's at a big theme park. It's in January, in conjunction with our meetings in January, and we kind of rotate between Disney, a Disney location, and a Universal Studios, Islands of Adventure location. For the last 3 years, the hotel has been at the Royal Pacific Resort at Universal Studios, and it coincided, I think, the first year with the opening of the Harry Potter world. It's January, it's held in the end of January. It's a great time for families. We usually get a great room rate in a hotel that, a lot of people can't afford to go to otherwise. And we are able to attract that kind of numbers to our seminars. Now, we do have on the reviews, I will tell you that, because I chaired that program for 4 years, but There are some people that say what they would like is to be able to watch it on TV in their hotel rooms, but that's really not the point. I mean, we really want the people to come down, listen to the speakers, network with other lawyers. We have a lot of judges, a lot of forensic accountants, psychologists, all the support litigation people that family law lawyers use on a regular basis. So it's a great opportunity for sponsorships because of the volume of people. The bigger the CLE you have, the more, these people more people they get to talk to.
That's exactly what they want. They always want to have that personal contact. At ours, what we've got is we've got a group of 2 people that are in charge of actually making sure that all of our members talk to as many sponsors as possible. They will run games that involve having to go speak to each individual sponsor. The sponsors get 30 to 45 seconds to come up at a break and just describe their product. We keep them physically located near where the people are actually meeting, and that gets us good retention of sponsors, which I think is really important.
I agree.
So,
Let's see, what else? There was a mention, I think it was Sean Desmond, that talked about the BOG, the Board of Governors liaison, and we are extremely fortunate. Our Board of Governors liaison, Dory Foster Morales, she is a family law lawyer herself, and she's been incredibly supportive, helpful. She generally comes into our meetings, often comes to our CLEs, and has been a wealth of information, especially in terms of how to present whatever issue we have or whatever topic we want to get the approval of the Board of Governors on. And it's really helpful. So I think that was a great idea that Sean had about reaching out to your Board of Governors liaison and maybe, I would suggest giving them the schedule of your events for the year and inviting that person specifically to your programs because they can be very helpful and kind of help you navigate also the ins and outs of getting in front of and speaking in front of the Board of Governors.
One of the other things that comes up sometimes is where do you get the new members from? I mean, if you've been in front of the same pool, everyone who's in your area knows about you, you're not likely necessarily to get a whole bunch of new members all of a sudden. Most people decide they want to be a member of your section, and then if they leave, it's either because they just got tired of paying the dues or decided they weren't getting enough value for it, or just for whatever reason didn't pay attention. And so one of the things you can do is to work in retention by making sure that you send out letters to all of your current members right before dues are due. In that quick link, we're including some comments in there about it's time to renew. Make sure you check the box for GPSSF. Help people remind them. Remind them of the value proposition that they get from you as to why they should be a member of your section. And just think about where you're going to get the new members from. One of the great sources that's available to you is law students. Okay, we've had Jennifer do a great job of going out and establishing connections with all the law schools and helped start up, basically sections or, I guess, committees in the law schools, associations maybe, that were interested in solo and small firm practice, where we would provide speakers or Jennifer would go meet with them, and if they had an interest in that area of practice, they could connect with us that way, and hopefully we then got them in as members when they became members of the bar. So you need to look at that. We even invited them to come to some of our meetings, and we held networking receptions where when we were in Miami, we had students from St. Thomas and from the University of Miami come join us. So
we found that having a little pizza party at their school, and just talking to them and telling them about the family law section, and including the food and drink also is very helpful for them. And also we go to local bar associations, which often have sections, a family law section within themselves, and designating people within our section to go and talk to them about the family law section and the benefits of membership. Also, what we attempt to do on a regular basis is to make sure if there are new members to go out of your way and really charge your executive council members to go out of their way to talk to and welcome and really solicit the participation and encourage people to become active by telling them about their experiences and how working or participating in the family law section has benefited them and their practices. I think if these people come to a meeting and nobody talks to them and they don't feel welcome, they're not likely to come back. So it's important that your leadership reach out to people and make them feel like there's a reason for them to come back, and there are things that they can do, and because I think everybody wants to feel like they're contributing, and we need to show them how they can do that.
I think one of the other things you ought to think about as section leaders is, how do I hand off? How do I make that transition and give the new chair coming in behind me the opportunity to succeed? So do you as a section have some materials that you pass on to new chairs, new section leadership? Is there a book that you give them that has sort of how things are done? Do you have a way of sort of setting out for the new chair? Okay, here's the calendar for the upcoming year. Here is what we do when. And maybe, sitting down with them as they work through their meeting planning. If you think about it, that's actually one of the most important parts of your year, and it happens before you take over as chair. Usually is because you're starting to work on the meeting schedule. And if you're the chair, unless you've sat down and thought through it before you've set those meetings, you might not realize how critical they are. But the geography matters, the price of the hotel matters, what you're scheduling against matters. If you're putting it against a big game or in the middle of a religious holiday or during another bar meeting, that's all going to affect your attendance and the ability of people to show up at those meetings. You need to think about the facilities themselves. Are they good facilities, conducive to this? There's a new requirement now that all of the facilities that we use for our meetings have to be ADA compliant. So you may have a great idea for a rustic old hotel that you'd like to have your meeting at, and it might not be ADA compliant. So your program administrator is going to tell you you can't have it there because that's outside board policy. So there's all these little nuances that people need to think about as they're planning their year that you get after you've been through that. But if you're a newer person coming on, you might not realize all of those. A lot of people don't realize when they join section leadership for the first time that technically our meetings and the documents we create in them or for them are likely public records. And so if you have a lot of very critical, stuff being exchanged by email, you need to think about what's going in there. Because theoretically, someday someone might do a public records request and want to know what you said about this particular vendor, about this particular relationship with this outside entity. And if you've said a whole bunch of stuff that you don't want to see in the newspaper, you might wish that you had known in advance that that is potentially a public record.
That goes for the secretary when they're taking minutes of an executive council meeting, because I think, sometimes folks tend to express themselves, and you probably don't want to put all that's said in the minutes, and they really need to reflect actions that were taken or discussions that were had, but it's not always the best idea to put down a lot of details in those. But you're right, looking ahead for the chair-elect and the secretary and the treasurer, they kind of need to know what they need to do when. And I think our leadership retreat, we try to do that to give the upcoming folks an idea of when they need to make their appointments, when the applications for board certification need to be in, all the deadlines that need to be followed, because there's a tremendous amount of work to be done in preparation for taking over, not just after you become chair, but that year that chair-elect for us is generally it's kind of your importance is planning your activities and getting ready with your appointments for all the committees and the chairs and the appointments for everything that you're going to do for your next year. And it's hard, it's a lot of work, and you need to stagger it out or you're going to get overwhelmed.
And I think as the chair, one of the things you can do to help your chair-elect who's coming behind you is to start including them in all those emails, because you might have emails flying back and forth between you and the program administrator. Include the chair-elect on that, so chair-elect can see what's going on and see how that gets handled. It's just very easy just to have those communications, and the chair-elect comes in having never seen that, has no idea how we reached that decision or what is the reason we're doing it that way. So keep them included, give them hints as to what they're going to need to do. And there are ways in which you need to work with your program administrator to make your life easier and to make her life easier, okay? When it comes time for the budget to be adopted, meet with your program administrator before they have to sit down and explain the budget. Go over it with her, understand all the line items, and if there are things that are going to increase controversy during that meeting, have those answers beforehand so you can explain that budget and you're not going to get hung up in the numbers, because the budgets are a great opportunity to stumble and just sort of get lost in, well, tell me what this means and tell me what that means. So you really need to figure out in advance so that you can get over those humps and make that successful. The other thing I wanted to mention is I know I talked up the importance of sponsors. There's a caveat to that. be careful of getting captured by sponsors. Okay, where you get a sponsor who decides they want to provide speakers for you, and in return they want this much time at your meeting, or they want you to advertise them in all these different ways. You always have to decide if that sponsor is worth the trouble. Okay, and if someone is going to capture the section and try to use it for their marketing purposes, that can be problematic. You also have to be careful at conferences. We had one recently where we had, I think Lexus provided a speaker, and the Westlaw person was all bent out of shape that he didn't get the opportunity to provide a speaker. And a lot of that had to do with the way Lexus approached it versus the way that Westlaw approached it and who the individual reps were, but those things are still messy to sort out. So you need to anticipate who you're going to offend and what toes you're going to step on. And I think those are things you just have to go through sometimes. But it helps if you're the chair, if you share that with the chair-elect and say, don't step on these toes.
All right. And we had an issue one year where we had an exclusive sponsor. That doesn't work well. You have to be too careful not to have anybody advertise anywhere else, and it doesn't work. It did not work well for us, and we ended up having to refund some money, and you hate to give money back. I agree also with the comment about having them speak. We try to, for example, our annual conference that's very large, we only have board-certified speakers. We kind of advertise it as kind of for, it's not just for board-certified lawyers, because obviously we wouldn't get a very big turnout, or even those that are interested in that. But we do make a point to have our speakers all be board-certified. So that way we don't have to deal with our sponsors that want to speak. Because sometimes the sponsors end up being an advertisement for themselves, and that's not really what the attendees are looking for. So we like to have them out in the main room to network and to show us their products, but on small receptions, we'll often give them a chance to introduce themselves and to speak for a few minutes and tell us what they do. But we try to limit their speaking engagements as often as possible.
Yeah. I think the final tip I'll offer is one that, I really tried to strive to do my best to stick by the whole time, and I violated it here today. Okay, but it's to try to end every meeting at least 5 minutes early. So we're about to run out of our time. I think we should open the floor for questions if there are any.
Sure.
Okay.
I want to go 5 minutes early.
We've got one here.
I have a question on the short emails that you send out every 2 weeks. I mean, did you notice a change in membership or responsiveness to members?
It is hard to judge that. We are looking at that right now to see how our membership numbers compare year over year, but I think they have been effective. I think they are reaching our members. I think they are at least increasing our contact with them. The trouble you'll find when you go to evaluate something like that is your numbers will fluctuate over the year. Talk to your program administrator about what the rhythm is. But as you get through dues season, numbers will swell, and then they'll drop off during the year. So understand how you compare numbers may depend on where in the year you are.
And for Carin, when you were going through the hot legislative issue and asking
Yes.
members to call, I mean, did that increase people's engagement in other parts of the section's work? I mean, attending conferences or
I think it
volunteering?
I think it provided a lot of awareness, and I think it was helpful in engaging folks and really kind of showing them, giving them an idea of kind of like there is the family law section out there, and this is one of the areas which we focus on and which we deal with. So I'm not sure whether it translated into more members, but I think it made our members more aware. And I believe that we did get a good response. We ended up with a good result. Not to say it's going to happen again, but I think it was good. You're going to get some backlash about people that think alimony should be abolished forever, but the response was generally positive and helpful.
Thanks.
According to this, Kevin, we're now 6th largest in Elmwood, less than 200 behind criminal law.
Okay, so it must have worked. All right, any other questions?
All right, well, thank you
all so much.